What's the worst display of incompetence you've ever witnessed? Story 1. Probably Slingshot Tim, a guy I used to work with who managed to slingshot himself into an office table during a meeting. Tim was the definition of an unnecessary hire. His dad was one of our most important suppliers at the time, so the boss was forced to hire him for a job he basically couldn't do, but also couldn't ever really be fired for. It was the moron sweet spot. During one meeting with Tim, I saw him lean really far back in his chair during a meeting. Far enough back that the chair started to creak loudly. So far so standard, but Tim had done this maneuver without turning the little knob thing under the chair to give himself a little slack, so he had to push really hard against the base of the table to stay in his casual position. It looked like a surprising amount of effort. Tim was visibly sweating to stay cool. Eventually, Tim couldn't take it anymore and ended up slipping about 2/3 of the way into the meeting. Thanks to physics, the lack of tension shot his chair forward, throwing him into the conference table. He took the entire desk to the chest, shaking the projector enough to unplug it from the wall and spilling more than a few cups of coffee. It was the most hilariously loud and stupid thing I've ever seen in a meeting. Even people walking by the conference room completely stopped to witness this grown man turn himself into a human catapult. He picked himself up on the floor in a daze and then started hurriedly packing up his stuff amidst uproarious laughter and ran out of the room. I'm not sure if Tim still works there, but I'm definitely sure the legend of Slingshot Tim endures to this day. Our latest crime-fighting superhero, Slingshot Tim. Story 2. I was working for a small magazine in college. At the time, I was a lower-level section editor and was finishing up an article in Black Hippie, Kendrick Lamar's rap group. I was in the views or opinion section and the article was in the same section. However, it didn't have enough opinions in it, so I had to keep editing it. Edits were getting sloppy because I was exhausted and sent one draft back with things in parentheses instead of a different color, and it read like, Kendrick Lamar will undoubtedly be one of the most influential rappers of our age. Is this enough of an opinion? I mean, I'm trying to add a viewpoint wherever I can, and I'm really getting exhausted and we need to move on to the other articles. The editor-in-chief replied back yes, and I said awesome. The day of print, I go and look at my article, and there's my freaking comment with the parentheses stuff still there. Story 3. I was doing contract work in Miami for a pharmaceutical company making a product containing nitroglycerin. They had a chemist, PhD, who I thought did some odd things, but one fine day we had a meeting across town with him in it. It was a planned meeting. The subject material was known to all days before it. During this meeting, the good doctor gets up to make some points. This prompted him to start drawing a stick figure of nitroglycerin on the whiteboard. He drew 3 carbons, so far so good, and then another, and finally a 5th. I looked at my boss. I'm an R&D engineer, physicist by degree, and he saw it too. Nitroglycerin doesn't have 5 carbon atoms in it. It has 3. While this might be a little nitpicky, this guy was the chemist for this plant. With PhD, and nitroglycerin delivery was the entire point of the product. I checked everything I saw from him after that, lest it become my mistake. Whoa, hang on. This is a story about gross incompetence in nitroglycerin and it doesn't end in an explosion? What a letdown. Story 4. I work for a different cable company and I can tell you that subcontractors are a freaking nightmare for everyone involved. So far I have experienced latex, techs outright refusing to do jobs because the attic is too hot. The customer had a medical emergency, so instead of rescheduling like she asked, he just canceled the job. Accounts are being put in limbo because they keep being rescheduled. Alarm techs that will look for excuses to not install security systems, including but not limited to lying to customers that their current systems are not compatible with a takeover, telling a customer that their 2-pound Yorkie will set off the motion detector, and finally, a tech that was caught rummaging through someone's medicine cabinet. Had I not sold so many self-install boxes this month, I would not have made my sales goal. I'm at the point now where I write in the order to only send corporate techs and I instruct customers to turn away anyone who doesn't show up in a corporate van. Contractors will show up in a pickup truck or SUV. Story 5. I work in construction. Incompetence is a daily occurrence, in no particular order. Number 1, crane operator overcompensated and slammed the 35-ton air handler he was placing on the roof into the wall of the hospital. Number 2, the medical gas certification company didn't check all the outlets in the line, just the last one. Well, he screwed up and read the gauges wrong. Passed the system and it went into operation. 2 weeks later, a patient is brought into the ER and requires oxygen, so they hook him up to the oxygen wall outlet. The only problem is that during construction, some dumb got the line crossed and the oxygen outlet was actually connected to the vacuum line. The patient was fine after some well-deserved freaking out. Number 3, all shaft walls are 2HR rated, UL listed enclosures for fire safety, and this is strictly enforced and doubly so in hospitals. Well, some hospital maintenance guy decided that the exhaust fan the hospital was putting in on the slide needed to have the ductwork go up the shaft. So he punched a 4x4 hole in it and ran some ductwork through it. Never sealed the hole. No fire or smoke dampers, no nothing. We found it during the demo when we renovated the area. Number 4. During an inspection, there was a problem with the way the sprinkler heads were installed. Nothing major, just needed to tighten some uplift restraints. Well, you need to be licensed to work on that stuff. So the idiot plumber decides, hey, I've got a wrench and can tighten stuff. So he climbs on the ladder and starts going to town in front of the inspector. Came very close to failing the inspection. 5. Everyone is complaining that there's no hot water in half the hospital and starts blaming my design.
Okay, let me look. Well, the idiot plumber put all of the check valves in backwards, so no hot water was allowed out of the system. Number 6, found a fire damper propped open with a 2x4. Number 7, the previous contractor did not reconnect the storm pipes under the slab before repouring the concrete. Every time it rained, water would bubble up through the floor tiles and flood the EKG lab. The hospital didn't investigate until a patient slipped. They'd just been sending a dude with a mop to clean the floor.
Psst. Let's be honest. Does your room look dull as shit? Yeah, well, most do. Luckily, I just launched Rufus Rugs. Custom, hand-tufted rugs. And no, this isn't some BS dropshipping company. We have a warehouse in Canada where me and my friends hand-tuft every single rug. So if you're looking to bring your room to life with some awesome anime rugs, or literally anything you can think of, we can get it done for you. From Rick and Morty to The Last Airbender, we've got you covered. Hit the link in the description to get a free quote.
Story 6. I hired an so I'd have a date for my cousin's wedding. She claimed she was well-read and promised sophisticated conversation in her ad. In reality, first we bumped into the maid of honor's family. They had just seen Jurassic World and their son was reeling off of dinosaur facts as little boys are wont to do. Apparently the kid was not making enough eye contact for my date's satisfaction, so she asked, "Oh, is your son autistic?" "No." "Did you get him vaccinated?" "Yes." "You know, thimerosal really taxes a kid's system. You should get him checked out for autism." I quickly changed the topic and asked the maid of honor if she was ready for her LSAT yet. My date chimed in. "What are you, 30? Why didn't you take it in high school? Did you get knocked up or something?" I joked, "Well, law school isn't like the NHL. You can't skip college and head directly to the pros." Ends up, my escort thought the L meant it was the late SAT, like a dropout getting their GED. We had to explain to her it meant the law school admission test. During the reception, she enjoyed the open bar a little too much and started running her mouth when the best man's toast went along. "Toasts? They always give out toasts. Can't believe it." My dad had enough of her shenanigans by that point. "I don't have time to fight with you people. I've got another date in an hour." She stormed out of the reception and had to laugh off the other date line as us trying out an open relationship. Stupid question, but why in the hell would someone bring to a wedding? Just go stag or invite a friend. Story 7. I'm not sure where to start, but it was definitely by my dad. Let's see. My mom was away taking care of her sick mother for a month, and my dad occasionally had to make his own lunch before leaving for work. He'd make a sandwich, but he didn't even bother to put it in a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware container. He just put it in a freaking grocery bag. I don't know why, but this seemed particularly awful. He's given away his credit card number to people who emailed him, pretending to be from an internet provider he's never used. He says that he can't take basic safety precautions while driving, such as refraining from tailgating or speeding because I can't predict the future. Audacious. He says that budgets only apply to businesses, but doesn't have one for his business because he doesn't keep his business and personal accounts separate. They're the same account. Then refuses to follow a budget because budgets are mean. He's got a bachelor's degree in finance. My mom had her laptop on airplane mode to save battery, so when he was using it to check his email or something, she told him how to turn it off. When he got off it, he said, "I tried to put it back in airplane mode, but I couldn't find the airplane." There's probably worse stuff, but this is what comes to mind. I'll ask my siblings for examples at some point. Story 8. The funniest thing happened to me at a Dunkin' Donuts. I asked the cashier for an everything bagel. It was straight up like working with Consuela from Family Guy. Here's how the conversation went down. Cashier. "Welcome. What can I get for you?" Me. "Hi. I'll have an everything bagel with extra butter on the side." C. No everything bagel." Me. They're right there. Pointing to the rack labeled everything, the bagel is clearly a poppy seeds, sesame seeds, bits of onion, and oats on top. C. No, we don't have any. He hadn't even turned around to check. Me. If you turn around, there's a spot in the rack labeled everything. I'll take one of the bagels from there. C. No everything bagel. Me. Fine. Can I have one of those? Points to the rack of bagels. C. No, you can't have everything bagel. Pick something else. Me. What? Sounds like the guy hates cleaning up after those are cut and toasted, maybe. If you don't want to be rejected like this guy, leave a like in this video and subscribe to the channel, so go do it right now. Story 9. I was working with an older transportation engineer at work. The guy had literally designed hundreds of miles of highways, interchanges, and roadways. He was helping to write a 100-page document that I was an editor on. He took the document without speaking to any other member of the team and sent it out to 20 different people for their input without tracking changes on it. He said he thought that if he didn't change the name of the document, it would just automatically update on our server when they made changes to it. In the end, I ended up with more than 25 versions of it that I was checking line by line for changes at all hours of the night because it was due in several days and some of the changes conflicted. I explained the whole issue to him once I was finished fixing it all, but he did it again on another smaller document a month later. Then he retired suddenly. I think that they asked him to leave because his skills stopped developing in the 1970s, and because he stole food from work all the time, even though he was rich. Didn't miss him one bit. Story 10. Unfortunately, this would be me. There's this 2-story building at the university I attend with a math tutoring lab on the 2nd floor. As a freshman, I would constantly go to this lab because I was taking college algebra. I would be there early when they opened at 8 a.m. until I finished all of my studying and work. One morning, I got to the building and into the elevator. I pushed the button and wait to be taken upstairs. I felt that it was taking a little too long, but the university elevators usually took really long to take off. Plus, it was the morning, so I didn't really care. Finally, the doors open and there's this woman who looks surprised that I'm in there. She's just giving me this weird look. So I kind of just walk out and go towards the lab. However, the lab isn't there. Nothing is there that is supposed to be. In fact, the whole place was renovated. I mean, I'm dumbfounded. How could they renovate this much in less than 24 hours? I'm freaking out because I can't find the lab or anything else I need for that matter. I walk towards the doors and slam them open, but to my amazement, this is where I walked in. In other words, I'm still on the 1st floor. When I got in the elevator, I never pressed the button to go up to the 2nd floor. I just pressed the closed door button. So I spent some time in the elevator, and then once I thought I was on the 2nd floor, I spent some time looking for the lab. I felt like an idiot. I ended up finally making my way to the lab and seeing the girl that gave me that weird look there. Jesus, I still cringe. Sounds more like sleep deprivation than incompetence, to be honest. Story 11. Some lady I used to work with totaled a company vehicle in the parking lot. I wasn't there that day, but I saw photos of the aftermath. She was trying to back the news van out of the garage, realized she forgot something and got out, leaving the van in gear. Thing rolls downhill and gets wedged perpendicular between 2 parked cars. Both the cop and tow truck driver said, "How the hell did that happen?" All 3 vehicles were write-offs. This was the 2nd time she had damaged a company vehicle. Earlier that year, she was backing out of the mobile production van. It's one of those high-top cargo vans with an AC unit in the roof. She didn't roll the garage door up high enough. Off comes the AC. The door was also badly damaged. Bottom panel had to be replaced, which isn't cheap on those industrial doors. I thought for sure she'd get fired after the parking lot incident. The company is self-insured, so that must have cost a pretty penny. But no, she was still there up until recently and left on her own accord. She wasn't allowed to drive the vans anymore, though. Story 12. Assisted living home kitchen, worked there in college. They hired high school people as their first job and paid them minimum wage. One kid was instructed to make tossed salads. He didn't know specifically what the tossed part meant. Chef says you get all your ingredients in a bowl and you toss it in the air to aerate the salad. The kid does just that. The chef, bewildered that the kid believed him, called him out so hard in front of everyone who all laughed a lot for days, months even. In fact, this was years ago and I still tell the story. Another time we caught him staring at the schedule, for some reason looking confused since it was just a basic Excel spreadsheet very simple to read, and he came up with, "What month is June?" No one knew how to answer that question. There are so many more about this kid. I've lived on this planet for years, but what even is the tossed part of a tossed salad? Story 13. This story doesn't end with someone almost dying or anything, but it was the moment when I realized just how incompetent the company's middle management was. I work for a luxury retail company. My manager had been having issues getting into the hiring system to post job openings and push through resumes. He had access to it since he was hired for whatever reason, had been trying to sort it out for months because school was starting up again and he knew he needed more staff. He had been in an exchange with the person in charge of hiring and he kept explaining he didn't have access to the system. All the person had to do was email him a link to reset the password and he was golden. He gets an email saying that she will put it on her list of things to do today. She sent him an email saying she would send him an email with a link when she could have sent him the link immediately. We still don't have access to the hiring system and it's been a month. Story 14. In the early 90s, I worked at a small mom-and-pop ad agency. There were less than 10 employees. I was a graphic designer and spent most of my days behind a 21-inch CRT creating illustrations of food for several weekly newspaper inserts. The company had been doing weekly inserts like this for over 20 years, 4 years digitally, and had a pretty good library of artwork stored in the server. But as product packaging changed or new products were released, it was our responsibility to create it. For this task, we had a monthly stipend from the advertiser to purchase items as required so that we could photograph them, get them into our system, and photo illustrate them. Now let me introduce a man named Floyd. Floyd was an elderly gentleman. If I had to guess, he was 70 if he was a day. He was our driver. As an ad agency, often you're running film and stats and other printer press type things across town, last minute to make deadlines. Makes sense to have a driver. Floyd was good at being a driver. We gave him an address and he went there, and he dropped off what he had. Not much thought goes on. However, one late Wednesday afternoon, we're on deadline, grocery inserts go in the Thursday morning papers, and I learned very late that we're missing the new bag art for the 10-pound bag of Alpo dog food that's on sale tomorrow. As far as my job goes, this is about as panicked as I can get. Aside from a computer meltdown, there was not much else that could go wrong in my position. I didn't have time to run to the store, which I usually did, had it planned well. Everyone else was elbows and a-holes in their computers trying to hit the deadline. The only available body was Floyd, sitting in the corner, legs crossed, reading the newspaper. "Hey, Floyd, I need you to do me a huge favor." "Sure." "Take this credit card and run to the store. I need a 10-pound bag of Alpo. Hurry back quickly. I have to get this done before 6:30 when you drive over to the film." "Roger that." And off he goes for 45 minutes, never mind that it's a 5-minute drive to the store. Should have taken 20 minutes max. No cell phones, not reasonably priced anyway, and definitely not ubiquitous. So I wait, and finally Floyd walks in with a 10-pound bag of store-brand dog food. Floyd? Here's your dog food. Where's the Alpo? Oh, this was cheaper. I saved like $3. Floyd? We don't even have a dog. I snatch the card from his hand and run out the door to get the Alpo myself. To this day, I still can't remember if I made it back on time, or if I made the 6:30 delivery. But the legend of Floyd will live on in my mind forever. In his defense, they didn't specify it was actually for an ad. On the other hand, literally everything about the situation and their job should have made that very clear. Story 15. I used to work at a small private airport. We had one FBO that I worked for, and a smaller flying club next door. Basically some old guys who would sit around and talk and work on their planes. However, they did have an actual flight instructor who was notoriously called Downwind Bob, because he attempted a downwind landing and completely botched it. One day when I was working, I heard a small twin-engine, Piper Aztec or Navajo, plane call in on the local radio. No tower, they just announced their intentions to the other pilots that he's coming in for a landing on runway 31. I grab some chalk and head out to the ramp to direct him to a parking spot. As I'm waiting out there, I see Bob load up into his little plane, an air-anchor champ, and begin taxiing down to the opposite end of the runway, which would be 13. I again hear the Aztec call in for the final approach, while at the same time, Bob taxis in the runway and begins to take off. I realize that he must not have a radio, as they're not required at this airport, which is stupid, so try waving him down, but he doesn't see me. My next thought was just, oh crap, these people are going to see Jesus and I'm going to be on the news. As soon as Bob gets airborne, he sees the Aztec and veers to the right. They weren't really that close and the Aztecs landed fine, but as soon as the pilot got out, he asked, "Who the hell was that dirtbag that just took off?" To which I had to explain was technically a CFI who worked next door. My boss gave him a very strongly worded phone call when he came back. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. Lawyers, what's the dumbest thing you've seen happen in court? Story 5 was unreal. See you in that video.